Hope you guys are doing well. This video today is taking a look at the new website that kicked off on PlayStation history. In case you've been living under a rock, we are in the midst of selling the 30th anniversary of the PlayStation lifestyle, experience, the console. If you guys didn't get a chance, go back and watch my unboxing of console number 08762 out of 12,300. That was the limited edition PlayStation Pro console that I got. I love it. I'm going to have some more content on that coming next week with some gameplay and some thoughts and some of the menuing that I found that may help other Pro owners enhance their experience. But today, we're going to be looking at the website. And I love how this website is laid out. And I really love that game studios do this. I think it's important to remember the history. I think when Xbox did the virtual museum and you walk through, and when Nintendo had their virtual museum, it's important to walk through and pay virtual respect. But it's just fun to take a look back at memory lane. I mean, we're getting close to the end of the year. Holidays are coming up. It's a time of reflection and joy and happiness. And you guys know me, I am a 100% Sony pony. And I love that they are embracing the Sony brand with a 30th anniversary celebration. I got my PlayStation in June of 1996 for my birthday. I was going to pick up another game. I saw the PlayStation at Service Merchandise, and I told my parents that I wanted it, and I would forego my birthday and Christmas present and my birthday present the following year because it was $300. And they actually bit on that deal, and they bought me it that day. And to their credit, I did not receive triple presents for the next holidays, and I was totally fine with that. Man, this is just so cool to see, looking back at this thing, looking at the console. I actually still have the console. Funnily enough, I had some friends come over the other day, and I was showing off my man cave, and I did show them my original console that I did get and had to send it off to repairs because the Laserdisc drive was messed up, and there was a class action lawsuit, and I got Spyro for free, which I thought was amazing because I didn't realize my parents actually had to pay for shipping and repair costs, so I thought they were just giving me a free game. And then my dad explained to me, no, you idiot, you spent like $200 shipping off this plastic. I should have just bought you a new one. Oops. But I got Spyro out of the deal. It was a great game. But since the launch, the original PlayStation has sold over 100 million units, which is absolutely insane. It looks like the production officially stopped in 2006. At least that's when they stopped tracking the metrics. Looking at some of the games, top left, obviously Final Fantasy game absolutely revolutionized and changed gaming forever for me, for many others. Parappa the Rapper. And then I even see a little jump and flash down there in the bottom right. How cool is throwing a little jump and flash action? Looks like Ridge Racer in the top right as well. Lots of classic games, I think, to explore and enjoy. Here they have the infamous sound. We're going to play it right now. Make sure my volume is all the way up. Let's go. You know this. Sing along, hum it. Here we go. That is iconic. That is still iconic to this day. Still gives me goosebumps to this day. I mean, that meant you were in for a good time. I kind of wish that they had allowed that to be implemented in the PlayStation 5 Pro Edition. Embedded in every PlayStation subconscious is the iconic startup chime, a short burst of ambient music composed by Takafumi Fujisawa that welcomed players to every gaming session since 1994. He says, I express the excitement of the game that begins after the sound by starting the music quietly in order not to scare the user when they turn on the power, and then follow with the sound quality that sounds original and also welcoming. Well, Fujisawa, let me tell you what, brother, you absolutely nailed it. I only had the launch model. I didn't pick up the PS1 nor the PlayStation Classic, but you could see even as of 2018, they were still selling PlayStations, OG PlayStations. I remember they had the PlayStation combo pack that had this little itty bitty screen for on the road, which at the time was really cool. My friend Matt had one, and I remember playing and driving up and down, doing work, and playing on this little tiny screen. It was awesome. There you have the iconic controller, fresh in everyone's minds, probably because of the 30th anniversary, releasing that iconic gray color with the red circle, the pink square, the green triangle, and the blue cross. I think we all remember this. And back then, remember, no analog. This was OG. This was directional only. The amount of Road Rash I played with this controller, the amount of Final Fantasy I played with this controller was an absolute workhorse. Still have my original controller to this day. My cord is totally destroyed up here because I wrapped it around really tight because I'd put it in my bag and I'd ride over to my buddy's house, Bruno, and we would play Tony Hawk's Pro Skater. But you had to have your own controller. You never used the other person's controller because it was yours. You knew the nuances. Over time, my cross button did stick a little, but I powered through, and I absolutely loved it for that. They did release the DualShock in 1997, which, well, actually, the dual analog was 1996, I guess, right? I wonder what the DualShock... Okay, yeah. Yeah. Actually, I had the analog controller on the left. I did not have the DualShock, I think. Initially, I only had the analog controller. And then I'm pretty sure I did buy a DualShock, but I don't remember it being that PS1 logo. I remember it vibrating. I remember having the analog button that you could turn on. I remember it having a little bit of a rumble feature. But wow, those analog sticks absolutely changed everything in gaming. And I know, Nintendo had already done it before, but let's be real, Sony did it better. They had a bunch of colors. I think I had a clear controller later on at some point, but I don't remember if it was the analog controller or not. That's when I really started getting into like buying duplicates of everything because I had like 500 controllers. You could see here some of the accessories. I think everybody had a memory card, which was an 8 megabyte memory card. You had a little label that you could put the names of your games on there, and I didn't use the label, but I do remember seeing that. I remember friends who wrote their games in Sharpie, and it just looks stupid because we still had that like little kid writing. I didn't have enough friends for the multi-tap, nor the Pocket Station, and I didn't even realize they made a mouse. So I guess I wasn't as big of a Sony fan as I thought. Here's a handful of some of their iconic games, and the page is not loading very well. Ridge Racer absolutely had that. Had Tekken, had Wipeout, Resident Evil, Parappa the Rapper, Tomb Raider. Yeah, I had all these games. I had every one of these games here. I still have these games. Metal Gear was really, really cool because on the back of the box was Meryl's codec number. And in the game, that's when we started learning about the masterclass of Hideo Kojima. And he said, I think Colonel Campbell says at some point to Snake something along the lines of Meryl's codec is on the back of the box. And Snake, who doesn't realize he's in a video game, is like, huh, what? There's a little cool fourth wall breaking thing, but on the back of that Metal Gear case is Meryl's codec number to call her to communicate with her in a part of the game. Of course, everybody remembers the infamous Psycho Mantis boss fight who would read your mind. He would actually read your memory card and talk to you about the game you've played the most. And he also required you to plug your controller into port 2 in order to beat him because he would read your mind otherwise. Additionally, even more Metal Gear goodness. I know we're talking a lot about Metal Gear, but this was really... I'd say Metal Gear and Final Fantasy were the defining games of PlayStation 1. Even more amazing was when you re-fight Psycho Mantis again in Metal Gear Solid. I think it was 3... No, it had to be 4. Son of the Patriots. And you would switch your controller input to 2. You couldn't move. And Snake would say he couldn't move. And Campbell's like, you dumbass, you need to put it back on controller port 1. Oh, such a masterclass experience. And man, that really takes me back to just some amazing, amazing times in PlayStation 1. That was definitely my entire high school. 100% of my high school experience was on PlayStation 1 and the games, and slowly storing up enough money to buy new games and the joy of everything involving PlayStation 1, which was awesome. Moving on, PlayStation 2. These were my college years. I think a lot of people were buying PlayStation 2s at this point because of the built-in Blu-ray drive, of course. That was definitely a very aggressive campaign that they had going on. And you could see we got ours on October 26, 2000. I did get that at launch. I had just started college, and me and my buddy went to Best Buy in Melbourne and scooped it up. So I had that day one. I remember that well. I remember it came with the vertical stand. Remember when vertical stands were included? Even the PlayStation logo swiveled. So if you had it horizontal or vertical, you could swivel the little PlayStation logo so that it was upright for your experience, or you can see it that way. To me, of all the consoles, including the PlayStation 5 and PlayStation 5 Pro, to me, this is the most iconic looking PlayStation. I just loved everything about this thing. The fact that it had that blue lettering on the front, and then it had the blue like connection port. The fact that you could orient it horizontally or vertically, that it had the blue and green reset lights and the power lights. This console just was very, very special to me. It got me through a lot of times in college that weren't so good. I always knew at the end of the day I could come home and fire up my PlayStation 2, and it was just amazing. It is considered one of the best video game selling consoles of all time, selling a whopping 160 million consoles. Here you can see some of the advertisements. I do remember the PlayStation 2 reveal. Does it have a video of it? Nope, just some of the games. We'll get into the games in a minute. This was the first console to use what they called the Emotion Engine, which had 8 separate units that had some sort of functionality to them. I don't think anybody understood, or maybe they do now, what the hell the Emotion Engine was. We didn't care. We just knew we needed it. And of course, obviously, the DVD age. Now, they did release multiple variations. I still had and only had the original, but they did release a slim variant, and then they released some other colored variants later on that you will see as a trend where Sony continues to release things. It was the first console of the PlayStation family to adapt online play using the PlayStation 2 network adapter. I did not use this. I spent most of my time playing single-player RPGs, which I am sure they're going to talk about Final Fantasy. Final Fantasy and Sony's history are so interwoven, but I played so much of those games. ATV Off-Road Fury 2. It was all offline against bots, or just sitting in my dorm room late at night and just listening to music and playing some of my favorite games. But I did not have the network adapter. Here are some of the network games, which I do remember playing. Actually, you know what? I did play Battlefront. So I guess I must have had a network adapter. I guess I don't remember. No. I played Battlefront offline. That's how I played. I played against bots. I didn't play against other people. Tony Hawk, of course, is a staple. Final Fantasy. Well, see, these are the online games, though. That's what they're really focusing on. Like I said, that wasn't big into me. The introduction of backwards compatibility didn't really seem that... it's funny here. It says that their consumer-friendly decision was unexpected but welcome. Yeah, well, where'd that go, Sony? Where did that go? I wish more games were backward compatible. I wish more games had the built-in enhancements. I think this was the start of a great vision that didn't really pan out. But what I do remember, of course, is the console sequence. Not as iconic as the PS1, but we'll go ahead and listen to it now. And here we go. I mean, yeah, don't get me wrong, it's good, but definitely not as good as the first one. They briefed us with the concept that was beyond our image, like a monolith floating in space with the Earth in the background. I used the perfect fourth chords to stable harmony and express simple strength in the image of floating somewhere among space. I could see that, and they'd have little space imagery. Some of the most iconic games that to this day still hold a place in my heart. Eco, of course, Jak and Daxter. Actually, I'm looking through this list. You can see it on your screen now. Arguably the greatest game of all time, Shadow of the Colossus, absolutely changed my life. I did not play it until PlayStation 3, though. I remember reading about Shadow of the Colossus. I did not play until they did the PlayStation 3 remaster. Of course, the God of War series, was insane as well. Really, I'm surprised Final Fantasy X is not on here. Or was that PlayStation 3? I guess we'll find out. Maybe they didn't want to give too much love to Sony. I don't know. But the fact that there's two Team Ico games, one being Shadow of the Colossus, the other being Ico, just tells you how revolutionary that series, that franchise, how forward-thinking it was. I loved it. I didn't get into a lot of the peripherals in the way that a lot of other people did, particularly with the microphones and the buzzers, the iToy, Guitar Hero. I was a late bloomer into a lot of that. I wasn't really like blown away by that personally. Rock Band, definitely in the PlayStation 3 era. I'm sure they will talk about it. But really for me, I skipped over the PS Portable because I was still playing my original PlayStation. I was a poor college kid. Based on today's world, I absolutely would have had it. But I did go back. I did play Peace Walker. I did play Loco Roco. I did play Patapon. So I did get a chance to kind of experience the joy of some of those other games. But PlayStation 2, I think, will always be fond in my heart. And it will always take me back to a place that it was like my first independent console. I didn't have a ton of games for it. But the games I had, I worshipped, I loved, I knew everything about. And I will miss that console because obviously I, like everyone else, moved on to PlayStation 3, the Spider-Man console. PlayStation 3 launches in 2007. Again, working hard at this point now in my second job. Was that Lockheed Martin then? I might have been at Lockheed or else at Metric. I don't recall. But I was making good money. And I absolutely bought this at launch. I remember going to the store with my then girlfriend and picking this up on launch. What a great time that was. I don't like the look of the PlayStation 3. I think of all the consoles, it's actually the weakest in terms of visualness. I know they were trying to replicate the PlayStation 2 with that kind of cutout piece, but it was very large and bulky. The font didn't remind me of the old PlayStation font. I think they tried too hard on this. PlayStation 3 also marks a couple really significant changes in PlayStation's history. We'll see if they talk about them. I don't think they will because they're not good. You can see that it actually sold the weakest of the other two. It was 87 million, which is definitely not a number to shy away from, but you could see that PlayStation 3 was definitely the weakest one. I did like the cross media bar. I thought that was a phenomenal way. I love that blue line in the background. The cross media bar was a great way to navigate the console quickly. We started to see the invention of some 3D stuff, which was really stupid. It was the first console to include 1080p right out of the box. I did have a 1080p TV specifically for the PlayStation 3 console. They did go on to release a Slim and a Super Slim years later. Let's go ahead and listen to this startup sound. Now, this one is actually, I think this one was okay. Definitely not as good as the Iconic, but I think an improvement over PS2. So let's go ahead and listen to that together. Simple, effective. Let's see if we get a little quote here. The sound features an orchestra tuning up to express that something is starting. Oh, let me tell you, Sony, something was in fact starting. It was a revolution that you probably weren't expecting. And we'll go through the page before we get into the lowlights of this console. The big thing, of course, being the wireless 6-axis controller that featured built-in Bluetooth right out of the box. It had vibration with the DualShock enhancement if you ended up buying the DualShock. It was the last console to sell without a built-in wireless controller that had vibration. Since then, they've all done that, but this was kind of the migration over to the two. It had the PlayStation Move accessories. I didn't play any Move games. I was not a fan of Move. I felt it was a gimmick. I still feel it's a gimmick. I wasn't a big fan of it, and none of these games resonated with a lot of my friends, nor with me. But it did open up some massive, massive franchises, namely Uncharted, went on to sell 4 follow-on actually I guess 5 if you want to include Lost Legacy. Phenomenal sequels in their own right. Infamous, a phenomenal game. The Assassin's Creed series, why they're showing the greatest hits there, I don't know. Great game. Last of Us, of course, the first time we'd see this game, definitely not the last. Grand Theft Auto, Gran Turismo, and it included apps. This was kind of the beginning of the digital age, as they mention here, with apps to be able to kind of get into a console being more than a console. Microsoft would take this and bite it and go in a very incorrect decision with the Xbox One, thinking that people wanted more of this. Sony did dial back on their PlayStation 4. And here, they don't really talk about it too much, but this was one of the first massive hurdles that really hurt PlayStation. It was the massive PlayStation 3 network outage. It was down for a very, very long time. A lot of us were wondering what was going on. They got hacked. They couldn't figure it out. They built a new network. That actually might warrant a video, now that I think about it, because they just gloss over it. Yes, you started to get things like trophies and download games. The virtual storefront was really starting to take stride in 2006. Most of us did have faster than dial-up internet at our homes. I had really cheap broadband internet, but I did have internet. PlayStation Store, obviously a great way to download some of those fun little indie games like Horde and the little rubber ducky game. There were even Fat Princess, games that were staples in their own right, but not available in a storefront. And I think that's what makes the PlayStation Store's infancy so great, was they had games that you absolutely had to play, but you had to buy them online. Also included PlayStation Plus, which was a new subscription service that included discounts and full games and trials. I did get into PlayStation Plus after the network was brought back up online. I think a lot of people really enjoyed the early infancy of what PlayStation Plus was. It was kind of a pioneer subscription service. Same with PlayStation Home, allowing you to have this alternate universe where you can go do community events and mini games and interact and build little houses and homes. It was fun. I wouldn't say it was a massive hit, not for me at least, but it did exist. This does parlay into the Vita, another console that I did not have despite the amount of travel I was doing. I actually just brought my PlayStation 3 with me when I traveled. But I will say, looking through here, before I jump to PlayStation 4, going back to PS3, definitely a red stain, a black stain, I don't know, whatever color you want to use on PlayStation's history. It came out, they launched at a ridiculous $600 MSRP asking price, which caught a lot of people, myself included, off guard. Yes, I still bought it. Did not help the brand very much, though, because so many people were upset with how much the console was selling for. And this was around the era when the Nintendo the Wii was launching. Something totally novel and different and unique. And you kind of had the Xbox 360 rising up as well, which was my preferred console, believe it or not. I wasn't a true Sony pony until PlayStation 4. But I think everyone's interest in PlayStation wafted very, very, very heavily. I am glad that Sony really circled the wagons on this console, because it did have problems. At the PlayStation Network outage, it had that really weird infrastructure, which a lot of developers had a hard time coding to. Yes, it did have some standout games and some hits, of course it's going to, but it was a weak era. And it wasn't until the PlayStation 4 that they righted the ship, in my opinion, and asserted global dominance forever. And that's what we're going to jump into now, the PlayStation 4. They got it right here. This is the console that won all console wars. This is the heavy lifter. This is the console that went on to just break every possible hope that Microsoft ever had of being competitive ever again. It launched in November 15th, 2013. This is the first console that actually released in America before Japan or in Europe. Came with the DualShock 4, the share button, live game streaming, and a slew of games. If every major PlayStation 4 game was on this screen, we would be scrolling for about 45 minutes. Ghost of Tsushima, Horizon, Until Dawn, Bloodborne, The Order, which, to be fair, was actually a pretty good game. I mean, man, oh man, the logo greatness awaits. Vicious campaign against Microsoft, against the always-on TV. Went on to sell a staggering 117 million consoles worldwide. Still being produced today, still being played today. revered globally and internationally and spatially. How amazing was that? Absolute nail in the coffin for Microsoft at this point. No doubt about it. So many good things they did right. Had tons of RAM. It had the ability to play with another person remotely. I remember playing remote games with my buddy Sid. He would log into my console and we would play games together even though he was at home and I was at home. So you were doing this like virtual couch co-op. It had all of the communities and the ability to jump in and find other people playing games. The tournament scene really took off on PlayStation 4. As with all the other PlayStations, they would go on to release some unique ones. But this marks the first era of me buying multiple PlayStations because I bought the Taken King Collector's Edition PlayStation, the white one, which is not shown here. And then I did go buy a PlayStation 4 Pro. That also marks the beginning of PlayStation Pro era as well. And let's go ahead and take a look. I thought they were going to show the video. Here we go. Yep, let's go and listen to this launch music together. What? We can't listen to launch music together? Well, that's lame. We could look at a picture of it. Sony. Oh my God. How embarrassing for Sony. Let me pull this offline here and see really quick if I can find it. I got to go to a different website. Sony, you lose points. I'm hyping you guys up. I'm hyping you guys up. And this is what you give me? Oh, boy. All right, here we go. PlayStation 4 turn on sound. Here we go. Thank you, Dr. SR, for doing good work. Here we go. You ready? Let's go ahead and get this in. Oh, 480p quality, whatever. Here we go. Why am I not hearing anything? That's what I remember. Just that light guitar sound. Powering up PlayStation 4 users would hear relaxing ambient chords overlaid with a now plucked melody. No quote from the guy here. I love the simpleness of the PlayStation 4 loading screen. As much as I love the PS1, which will always be my favorite, the 4 was just a reset of everything. And I mean, even from the very first experience you had of this game, it was a complete betrayal, rightfully so, of what Sony had done in PlayStation 3. They gave up on everything. They started over with the new controller that had the share button. It had the touchpad. It had the light bar. It had a built-in microphone. It had a built-in speaker. This controller was your one-stop shop for you to enter into a world. If you didn't have a nice headphone, if you didn't have a nice microphone, you didn't need it. Now, did it sound as good as an external wireless microphone or headset? Of course not. But you know what? It got a lot of people in the door. And the vicious advertising campaign that they did, shredding Microsoft when they come out and Jack Tretton announces the console is going to sell for $299 US. Or was it $399? That's how iconic it was. I don't remember. It had to be $399. And after Microsoft had announced it was a $600 console, Microsoft basically took everything PlayStation 3 did down to the bad price point and copied it. And then you have PlayStation 4, the I Love Indies campaign, the idea of them going back to some of the older titles and cleaning them up, the double down on the smaller studios with the indies and the PlayStation Store. Everything Sony did was perfect in this. Clearly, they sold 117 million consoles. They had it on lock. And boy, did they deliver games. Resogun, which is the launch title with Contrast, if you had PlayStation Plus, which I did, carried over from your PlayStation 3. Infamous Second Son, Bloodborne, to this day, revered as one of the greatest games ever. Last Guardian, of course, another Fumito Ueda, his third game mentioned here as part of Team Ico. We saw Ico on the PlayStation 2 era and the Shadow of the Colossus era. Here he comes back with The Last Guardian. Very emotional game. Loved it. This ends kind of Nathan Drake's adventure with Uncharted. We saw Horizon. We saw Spider-Man, God of War, Ghost of Tsushima, Last of Us 2. Holy smokes. What an absolute just hit after hit after hit. Let's not even forget Days Gone, right? I like Days Gone. It was just an absolute beast. In 2016, they doubled down with VR. I did get into VR. This was an entry-level VR set. Got to play and meet our little buddy Astrobot in No Man's Sky, Beat Saber, Moss. Just phenomenally fun games that were just wholesome and enjoyable. Able to play with pretty much anybody who didn't have any experience in a console. Just to be able to pick up and play. I feel like PlayStation 4 just crushed it on every possible front. And I'm so proud of that console. And it was such a good time to be a fan of Sony. I feel like being a Sony fan was like, wow, you actually crushed it. And it's like, you know what, we did. And I loved it for that. And wrapping out the review here, we'll just go through it because for completeness, PlayStation 5, I mean, I think it's still paving its own story. It's still very young. You'll notice this is the first time we had a global launch. In the midst of COVID, PlayStation launched worldwide in 2020. Of course, I had one. It was delivered to my home. I think my wife got it, went outside. We didn't really understand yet what COVID was. I remember getting the console and like Lysoling it off and bringing it in with like gloves and stuff because we were all afraid and didn't want to die. But we turned out okay. This is definitely an interesting launch, and they even say it here. You know, it was the height of the pandemic, or really it was just starting. A lot of us were scared and confused. The world was shutting down. Digital market space had really taken over, and PlayStation 5 was kind of like normalness, I guess. It was exciting. It was something that we could all talk about and enjoy, and I think I'll remember it for that always. A slew of technology changes with the invention of the solid-state drive and the dual Sense controller, getting rid of the Dual Shock, calling it the Sense because of how wild the controller is and vibrating, and the inclusion of the Tempest 3D audio engine, which I've talked about on my audio channels guide playlist at length, really changed the game as well. Includes PlayStation backward compatibility. And here you can see some of the consoles through the years. I don't see the Pro listed here. That's okay. We did get the DualSense Edge controller, which included the 2 back paddles, which I do have and I enjoy thoroughly. Mass marketing has been made on PlayStation games, kind of shifting over to some of these larger-than-life games. It is not a game of the year if Sony is not in making it. That's just the truth. Astro's Playroom, for sure. Ratchet & Clank, Gran Turismo, God of War Ragnarok, Returnal, Elden Ring, Horizon Forbidden West, Spider-Man 2, Helldivers 2. I mean, man, oh man, oh man. And they're still coming out. PlayStation Plus gets an overhaul during this time with a kind of a new online catalog. Instead of just dropping a couple of games every month, they overhauled the game catalog. They introduced PlayStation Stars and the PlayStation Portal and the Pro, which that's my baby. And I will stop there because I think, yeah, rest is more to follow. I think that's probably a good place to stop. I've talked long enough. But wow, what an illustrious history, really, when you look at PlayStation across the board. Ranging from the 1 to the 5, the nostalgia, the history. Everything that Sony has done really has touched a gold, minus that PlayStation 3 era. That was a rough one. That was really a rough era for a lot of us. But what a rebound in PlayStation 4, a continued success going into PlayStation 5. There are no console wars. The console wars are ended. Sony is the king of consoles, period. They will always be the king of consoles. The games, the studios, the experiences continue on to this day. I love it for that, and I'm so proud to be a Sony pony. I know this video went long. I was a little fanboy. I wanted to kind of go through some of the history, and I'll probably just call it the history of PlayStation at this point. I think the website was a good guide for talking points, but ultimately, you know, there's more to follow. And like I said, I'm kind of stopping here specifically as we enter into the Pro era. What does that mean? What does the tail end of the PlayStation 5 era look like? We don't really know yet. What I can tell you is the Pro is freaking sick, and you will be getting some videos on that from me real soon. That'll wrap up today's video. Thank you guys so much for watching. Take care of yourselves, and until next time, I will see you guys on the other side. Bye-bye.